So hi everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. Obviously, hopefully you have seen that this week there are two. Well, so far there's going to be 2 episodes this week, and that's literally the only reason being is that me and Olivia have filmed the episode and we got on a tangent. We could not stop talking, and
we had more to say than we thought we did.
Yeah. So we're aware that a lot of you may not be interested in sitting down and watching us talk for an hour and a half to 2 hours about
I
monarchy.
wouldn't personally. I wouldn't want to watch this for an hour in one sitting. So
what we're going to do is we're going to split the 2 clips. So the first clip that you may have already seen, we will be discussing, or we will have discussed, some brief introductions to the royal family and what the monarchy meant for us, for example, growing up in Britain, and also about Prince Philip's recent death. And then this episode that you're about to watch is going to be us talking about Meghan and Harry, so Meghan and Harry's interview with Oprah and our opinion about how they are portrayed in the media. So we hope that you enjoy them.
Spoiler, it gets long.
Yeah, it's very long. So if obviously no pressure, if it's something that you're not interested in, you don't have to watch, but I know that a lot of people have specifically asked us to talk about the interview. So if you want to watch both parts, obviously feel free to do so. If you only want to watch one and you want to watch the shorter one, for example, feel free. These are just to help you out, and this was just really, really requested. And like Olivia said before, we didn't realize we had such strong and so many opinions about the topic until we really got into the discussion. So sorry that it's long, but hopefully it's an interesting topic for you. So yeah, enjoy the podcast episode. But I think one thing that everybody who's been asking us to talk about this topic, everybody is dying to know about our opinions on Meghan and Harry. For those of you who don't know, first of all, have you been living under a rock? Second of all, Meghan and Harry are Charles and Diana's second. So Harry is William's brother. It's Charles's second-born son, Charles and Diana's second-born son, and he married a woman called Meghan Markle, who has caused a lot of controversy in the royal family. I'm pretty sure she's the first person of colour, black member of the royal family.
Controversy, her existence.
Well, yeah, she hasn't caused it, but her being in the royal family is very controversial to a lot of people. I'm pretty sure she's the first black person to be in the royal family, black member of the royal family. I
think generally non-white, not even just black, just non-white.
Yeah, just generally not, and she's not British either. I don't think.
Not in this immediate line. Do you have anyone that's not white and not British born?
Yeah.
When we followed that purple line down, so that's why it's sort of, this is a big change. It should not be a big change,
and I think,
but the media made it a big deal.
And I think as well, there's like this whole thing as well, because if you don't know, if you've never heard of her before, if anybody's watched Suits, great TV series, but she is in that because before she was in the royal family, she was an actress. Her job was an actress, and I think this was very controversial when she came into the royal family as well, because if anybody's seen Suits, it can get quite raunchy at times. There are sex scenes in it, for example, where Meghan Markle is maybe half naked, for example. And a lot of people said, is this really the image you want of the royal family? You inviting these people, and all of that sort of stuff. So it was very controversial.
It perpetuated this idea that you have to be almost royal yourself to become part of the royal family, and that is true to an extent that a lot of like we say, Prince Philip is not an ordinary man. He was himself a member of numerous royal families from other countries, and
was it the Netherlands and Denmark?
Greece and Denmark.
It was Greece and Denmark.
So either way, he's part of numerous royal families. Princess Diana was also part of a noble family. I don't know where. I think Camilla was as well, to an extent.
Wasn't, I don't believe, but she went to a prestigious school with William.
She's not, but she's also not like. So there was when Kate married William, there was a lot about like, oh, Kate's this like commoner but she's also not like me and Anne, but like she was still moving common. In.
She was in a very
she was still in higher social circles. That's how they met. It wasn't a total accident. You didn't go down to his local supermarket and then just happen to bump into Kate.
I like it.
She was still moving in different social circles to we might move in. But like then sort of the further away you get from like the immediate line of succession, people do generally marry ordinary people. They're often very wealthy people, again, because that's how they've met. But it becomes more and more common, like Zara Tindall was married a rugby player, Mike Tindall, And then I think both Beatrice and Eugenie have married very, very rich guys, but that's by.
And I mean, that makes sense because, you know, if you think about the people who would be invited to royal events or in the same
exactly,
sort of
we've got to
places
think
that royal
about who
people
they need.
be.
So it's kind of, it's sort of, it's not their fault that they end up marrying people who are similar to them in an extent because of, say, you're like the people that they do meet. And say the kind of events that they will,
like you say, you can't
attend.
imagine one of the royals going to like the Uni of Liverpool or like Newcastle Uni, can you? Like they would obviously go to a very prestigious or wealthy school. Like I'm pretty sure all of the kids like George and Charlotte and Louis go to, or Lewis, and I pronounce it,
they will go to
private schools that you pay a lot of money for because obviously the royal family has that money. So yeah, I think it's obviously a very good topic to bring up, this whole Meghan and Harry thing. Obviously specifically, so like I said, if you didn't know, Meghan and Harry have decided, I mean, you know a little bit more about this than me, but generally they have basically turned around and said, we don't want the responsibility of being in the royal family. We don't want that anymore. We don't want, you know, when I was talking before about each member of the royal family having their name and their title, they decided for their son that they didn't want him to have a title. So he does not have one. And I'm pretty sure he's the only member of that line of succession. They didn't
decide that. Sorry, that was decided for them. They were informed that Archie wouldn't have a title. So that was part of the interview that came up, that's unusual. So
why was he not allowed?
It's not explained. So this is all part of what came up. I don't know if you've seen this, is sort of why it's become such a big topic recently. They did this interview with Oprah Winfrey and sort of, you know, told all, and it was a really interesting interview to watch. It's kind of fallen out of the public eye a bit now because obviously Prince Philip's death has sort of thrown that out of the spotlight. But no, so it was, they were told that Archie wouldn't have a title, which is, you know, ridiculous. If you look down, every single other one of those children on that line has a title of some reason, and he should be a prince. Like the rules of the monarchy are that he should be a prince. For whatever reason, he was not going to be.
Do you think maybe it came from a place of like, once they'd said we don't really want these responsibilities as royals? I don't know if that's exactly what they said. You might know more than that. But do you think maybe because they sort of withdrew, they were like, well, you kids
I don't think so, because I think they withdrew after that. And also, they did not step back from the royal family. This is also a big thing. It's been treated completely the wrong way. So you have different tiers of royal family members. You have the senior royals, who are people like Charles, Camilla, and until now, William and Harry and their families. So they are like the senior royals. They're the ones that are almost like a full-time royal, let's call them that. So they are, it's their full-time job, if you can say that. It's, you know, it's 100% what they do. And then if you look at sort of everything to the right of that family tree, where you've got the Queen's other children and their children, I don't know what their official role name is, but let's call them junior royals, because I can't think what else to call them.
Don't take that for word, take that with a pinch of salt.
That's not what it's called. So they are not senior royals, which means that they are called upon for big royal occasions, you know, royal wedding, they'll all be there. Big events in the royal calendar, they will all be there. But they have their own lives. They're allowed to have their own jobs. So, you know, they have their own lives, as it were. So what Harry and Meghan said is they wanted to step down from being senior royals for numerous reasons.
And be a junior.
Yeah, but let's call it a junior royal. They just wanted to basically go, we want to have our own lives. And also, you know, I can completely sympathize is the wrong word, because I don't know Harry's struggle, but as you can see, as soon as his brother had children, Harry's now what, 6th, 7th in line to the throne. You know,
so this is the whole thing with firstborns and like, you know,
the second born is the spare.
Yeah.
You know, as soon as William married, as soon as he had children, Harry was then, his job is done. You know, his whole purpose
I think the
in life.
most interesting example of that is Princess Anne as well. So obviously Charles's sister, she started off being maybe 3rd in line for the throne, and because Charles had more kids and then William and Harry had kids, she is now, I think, 15th in line, because she will not get it until all of Charles.
It can change so much.
But sorry, continue what you were saying.
Exactly. So this is a kind of, so then it was completely reported in the media, this idea that they've left the royal family, they've broken the Queen's heart, they've done all of this. And so this was something they clarified in their interview. They were like, we just said we didn't want to be senior royals anymore, which I think is perfectly valid when you
makes so much sense, especially if they're not.
You know, he doesn't need to be a senior royal anymore, because it's all about William and his children. Yeah, they've completely taken over the spotlight in that sense. And you can kind of understand that when you've been spending your whole life just preparing to step in just in case, you know, you're the sub on the side of the football field. As soon as you know that, like, I'm not going to be needed,
especially because even now, if something happened to William, Harry wouldn't get it, George would get it.
No, exactly.
And then Charlotte would get it, and then Louis would get it, and then Harry would get it.
Yeah. So this is obviously, you know, a whole huge controversy thing. And say, you know, there's obviously so much that's not. It's not like we know everything that goes on in the royal family. We only know what's reported in the media. But, you know, I personally have absolutely nothing against Prince Harry. He comes across incredibly well. I think, you know, obviously he's had his entire life scrutinized. There were, like, I just remember there being pictures of him when he was on holiday, when he was like similar to our age. You think he's been followed his entire life. And say he's in this awkward position as like the spare. And so I'm thinking, like, absolutely fair play too. If you want to kind of step back and say Meghan was going to continue acting, because this was something they brought up in their interview, don't know how true this is or not, but they were essentially saying that money is running out to pay for all of these senior royals without them having occupations of their own. So it seemed to be in discussion that Meghan would continue working as an actress in order to actually like pay for their own lives, which is also totally fair. You know, there's no necessity for them to not earn their own income. And then so the big accusations were made in this this interview they did, that they were told they weren't going to have security anymore. And so,
which for a royal is just ridiculous, because
it's utterly ridiculous.
That is so dangerous. Yeah, that is so dangerous, regardless of whether they
like. Yeah, it's not them being some big celebrity that are like, yeah, I need security. Because
no, they genuinely do need celebrity. They do need security.
You know, if you're in a position where you've got photographers and journalists hiding in your bushes outside your front door, you need high-level security. So this is what they say is the reason behind their move to America, is because they were just like they didn't see a way out in the UK, like say they were. So they were sort of saying, right, if we're going to suddenly have to start, you know, paying for our own security and things like that, you know, we need to get out, we need to leave. And I think the way that they said it was they would just want to step down one tier
rather
they
than
weren't
away
quit. And then the way it's happened is they've essentially been completely cut off. Say they've lost all their titles have been taken away, all of the work that they do. So Harry was incredibly involved in numerous military things, numerous charity things, for example. All of that's gone, which obviously they were very hurt about, because sort of, as again, I don't know, there's so much sort of the public doesn't know, but it's like that seems very drastic, and was not what they wanted to happen. But it seemed like the way that they painted it was the royal family was kind of like, well, you're all in or you're all out.
I think this is one of the things that makes me so sad about that. I mean, just in general, I'm very much of the opinion that other people's lives and other people's decisions are none of your business. Like, just in general, not even in regards to the royal family, like generally what people choose to do with their life, what people decide they want to do, has no effect on you personally. So just let them get on with it. And I think especially in this context, like when you read, and I think this is something we should talk about now as well, because Olivia has some screenshots to prove this, is the way that the British public and the British newspapers think that they can have an opinion, and think that they can treat Meghan and Harry just because of their decisions to protect their son, protect their family, is just absurd to me. Like, you know, they have, like Liv said before, they have photographers hiding around like the outside of their houses trying to get pictures of them, and like all of this stuff where it's like, you don't have an opinion on that. Like, them deciding to step down, wanting to step down one layer in the royal family has nothing to do with the British public. It doesn't affect us, because realistically Harry's not going to be king. Like, he isn't. In their family having, you know, it makes no difference to us. So people, and I think people get so involved in it because they think, well, it's my royal family, I have a right to my opinion. And obviously have your opinion, that's fine, but getting involved and believing that you have a right to be like, no, Meghan, you have infiltrated our royal family and done this. Like, people just need to calm down and give it a rest. Like, it's unnecessary. And especially, we're going to show you some screenshots now, especially when you read the way that people talk about Meghan Markle as well. It's just out of order, completely out of order. Because a lot of people will say, you know, the fact that she's the first Black member of the royal family has created a lot of controversy, and you can see that there is clear racism, and people will try and sugarcoat it and put it in a little box and put a bow around it, but it is just racism. And you can see this discrimination when you read certain articles, and Olivia has some pictures that we're going to have a look at now, which show you some newspaper articles which were written about Kate, and then some which were written about Meghan. So you can see that there's a stark difference between how the newspapers portray Kate versus how they portray Meghan. And really, Meghan is doing the same sorts of things that Kate was also deciding to do, and is just completely discriminated against for it. And it's just not fair.
Exactly. And so this is something that personally, you know, to me, I think it's absolutely no wonder that
they want to leave,
ended up making the decision that they did, because you think if you were in their position and this is the sort of thing that was happening to you, and one of the things that Meghan said in her interview was that you know, she wasn't going anywhere. Like you know, she was at home, or she said she's not left her house, or say that her and Prince Harry's residence in about like 3 to 4 months. And yet, according to the news, she was everywhere. She's over every single paper, and you just can't fathom how you deal with that, you know, because this is the other thing I was thinking about earlier, and when I was reading a lot about some very negative things being said about Prince Philip, about people's opinions with his death, saying, you know, I refuse to grieve, and I refuse to mourn. I think it's ridiculous that the country's going to this. It's not that big.
You don't need to grieve.
It's also like my point here is that a lot of these people that have their opinions have a problem with the monarchy. It's not necessarily a problem with the person, and that's the point. It was like, yes, of course they're exceptionally privileged people, but they are people.
Yes, I read an article about this.
They can't help, you know. There's no point like having a go at someone like Prince, you know, or having a go at someone like, say, Prince Harry or Prince William, because of their life of privilege. They've been born into that family.
Yeah, they didn't choose that.
Help who your family is. So that's the part that I find really gets my back up, like when I read.
But do you not think as well, like it's this whole idea of like people think, oh, they were born into this, like they're in this life of luxury, you've got nothing to complain about, like, and have such an issue with the monarchy. And then in the case of Meghan and Harry, when they've said, okay, we're going to try and step down, people are like, well, you can't do that. You're joking me. Yeah. It's like, you don't want them to be in the royal family because they're too privileged, and you don't want them to leave because of tradition. Exactly. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, you can't be so hypocritical and like counterproductive with that. Like, you need to.
I completely agree. I think people's reactions to them, say, leaving and saying they essentially want to step down, be self-sufficient, but still be the figurehead, say, be the incredibly important supporters of charities and things that they are, which I believe, in my mind, that's the way forward for the monarchy, in the sense that if you're not sort of, you're not directly in line to the throne, you know, earn your own money, like support yourself, but still be in that figurehead position that I think is what the monarchy is really important for. And say, but even for some reason, people didn't like that, again, because it's just suddenly people have this opinion. And I say, my main like bugbear with posts and things that I read at the moment is saying, especially people saying really awful things about Prince Philip and the fact that he's died. Yeah, Prince Philip himself was a problematic man, but he was also an old man. You know, you can't necessarily blame someone's views on like because it's a product of them. They're a product of their time. I don't think you can always really judge the opinions and the things that a 99-year-old man says by 21st century societal rules. Anyway, to the pictures.
I was going to say, we've been on for quite a while. I don't want to get bored.
I know we might have to do a part 2 because there's so much to say about this.
There really is. So we'll give you a brief little flavour of some of them. So on the left, you've got an article about Kate. So it says, not long to go, pregnant Kate tenderly cradles her baby bump while wrapping up her royal duties ahead of maternity leave. And William confirms she's due any minute now. And then about Meghan, why can't Meghan Markle keep her hands off her bump? Experts tackle the question that has got the nation talking. Is it pride, vanity, acting, or a new age bonding technique?
Exactly. So these are both from Mail Online. The Daily Mail is the biggest tabloid. I would say it's the most popular, most well-known tabloid newspaper in the UK. So it's sensational news, gossip, that sort of thing. But say the portrayal of Kate, but the words that are used are all very
I've just noticed as well. on the pictures of Meghan Markle, they're really taking the mick out of it. You can tell that the one on the right is very like patronizing, it's very offensive. And even the fact they're like mockingly being like, oh, left hand touch, the handbag shield, it's like making it seem like some sort of like stupid technique that she's just come up with, when really she's holding her baby. And obviously
she's holding her baby bump like any pregnant woman would.
And when Kate does it, it's beautiful, it's tender, it's really lovely, cradling her baby. And when Meghan does it, it's like, oh, she's so obsessed with herself, she can't keep her hands off.
And say in this, like, is it pride, vanity, or acting? Those are three very negative things. You know, they're not saying, or is it tenderness, to compare it to Kate. So this is a good example.
What else have we got?
And then another one comparing, because obviously most of these comparisons came out during their pregnancies. So when Kate was pregnant with either one of her children, when Meghan was pregnant with Archie, probably 2 years ago now.
Oh my goodness, that is ridiculous.
Again, like, I mean, these are hardly news articles anyway. Like I said, the Daily Express is another tabloid newspaper, stupid news articles anyway. But this is sort of the thing that we mean, where like every aspect of the royal's life is somehow turned into a news article.
And also the fact that, you know, when Kate does it, it's this fantastic thing. When Meghan does it, people always go to the other, like, and like I saw somebody, you know, talking about how Meghan has been like, she's really distanced from her family, and now she's doing the same to Harry. She's trying to drag him away. It's like, dude,
it's this idea that and this was the main thing that was addressed in this article, was this idea that Meghan has basically had this master plan from the beginning, that she was going to come in,
infiltrate the royal family,
and then go off back to America and take Harry with her, which is just utterly ridiculous.
It's stuff like this that just confirms my opinion about news. I don't know if you know this, none of the students will, but I refuse to watch the news. Everyone's like, oh, you should watch the news or read the news to know what's happening in the world. I'm like, no, I won't, because it's either really stupid, pointless articles being like, what has Molly May been doing on her Instagram story? And it's like, who cares? Or it's such negative things where people have read into something or made assumptions about something. Like, you don't know, like, these people don't know Meghan Markle, they don't know Kate. Like, don't make assumptions about them and their life when you don't have the facts to do so. Like, and if Kate and William had done this interview, you would not have seen anything. They'd be like, it's so courageous of Kate and William to stand up and say these things. And now when it's Meghan, it's like, oh, well, Meghan was suicidal. Clearly there's something wrong with her, rather than why did she feel like that? You know, how could the royal family have negatively impacted that? You know?
And the sort of, like, say, especially like the so this is the sort of thing that they were talking about in their interview, is this it's the tone of the press around anything that Meghan and Harry do. So it's
so much more scrutinizing.
They do an interview and they'll say things like they're spewing, or like they're say spewing is always a good one, but like, you know, they're spilling their guts, like all these really awful phrases to mean they're doing an interview. And this is no one watching will know this, but it led to a really big moment on British news afterwards. So there's a news presenter you may have heard of called Piers Morgan. Who I really
ridiculed Meghan, ridiculed her.
So he's a very controversial newsreader. He's only recently become a newsreader of sorts. You know, he was
a TV. He had his own TV show.
TV host, but he's only recently become a regular newsreader. He's very controversial. He's very forthright, and so that's why he kind of became very popular, because, you know, he would take no nonsense in interviews, and that was very good when he was interviewing government figures, for example, especially during the coronavirus period, where they've you know, he really did, you know, if someone's done something wrong, you know, if a government minister needs to answer for something, he would absolutely rip them to shreds. But it's that he presented Good Morning Britain, which is the news channel that my family would watch every morning, and just it was so unpleasant to watch every morning. He's no respect for his co-presenters, especially the women. He's made such awful comments about things that they were wearing. He'd sort of be like, ooh, you know, our newsreader Charlotte's coming in a mini dress this morning and she was wearing a knee-length dress. Like, he was so misogynistic. He would never let the other presenters speak, especially the female ones. It was his own opinion, his own voice the whole time. And he particularly has a vendetta against Meghan Markle. So Piers Morgan. Yes, so he's had this vendetta against Meghan Markle. There's numerous stories about how they do know each other personally, apparently. But either way, the way he has talked about Meghan Markle has been utterly unacceptable. Like, he is part of this media wave that just constantly talk about her using the most horrible negative language.
Maybe we can try and find the clip from Good Morning Britain when he talked about Meghan Markle, and we can add it to the comments.
I'll link
have a little look.
There was a good couple where he was it was either about this interview or another recent interview that Harry had done with James Corden. I think it was about that one. And immediately started, and he's just going on this like rampage about say them spewing their guts and all of this, and that's how he's talking about it. And Susanna Reid, his co-presenter, who's someone who I think Susanna's fantastic, and she was just kept trying to say to him, like, you are proving their point currently. The way that you are talking about them in this horrendous negative way is exactly what they're saying they left the UK to avoid. But so he wouldn't take any of that. And then the morning after the Harry and Meghan interview aired, obviously he had a similar sort of similar horrendous speech, and he especially said about the fact that he did not believe her for a word when she said that she was suicidal, which is utterly unacceptable. You don't whether it's someone in the public eye or someone
personally, you can never tell somebody, no, you weren't suffering from mental health. That's not how it works. Because
how does he know exactly?
Like someone walking around with a knife in their leg going, I've been stabbed, and then go, no, you haven't.
You go, no, you haven't. Exactly. Like, so it was awful. It was completely uncalled for. And then so on the next morning when the news started, he started very well. He made a very misogynistic comment about one of the other co-presenters. It got off to a good start, and the tension on the news program was like palpable. Like, there was clearly people were not, no one was happy.
And then, long story short, he stormed off and quit his job.
So they got one of the other male news readers to basically, he just on air he told Piers Morgan off essentially, and just said, and the way that you talk is utterly unacceptable. And he was just like, I'm not going to sit here and let you do this anymore. And like a toddler who was told he couldn't have ice cream for breakfast, Piers Morgan stood up, stormed off the set of Good Morning Britain and quit. Which was
we'll definitely try and find we'll definitely try and find the link though. So if anybody is interested in having a little look at the way that people were talking about him, maybe we could have a little look online as well, and maybe some interesting articles about this sort of stuff as well, in case you want to have a read of some stuff rather than listening to it.
But say this guy Piers Morgan was a prime example of how badly people spoke.
Meghan. Not
badly, and sort of said, just as in how negatively and completely unnecessarily,
and I find, because I'm not going to name them, but there are members of my family who don't really like Meghan Markle, and I find from my personal experience, whenever they start talking about it and you go, why don't you like Meghan Markle, they're like, well, because, and I'm like, why?
No one has a
why do you not like Meghan Markle? What has Meghan Markle done that you do not like that they often can't
made you have this opinion of her?
And this is another reason why I hate the news, because I think people don't take it with a pinch of salt. People read news and think this is the truth, and really you can never know the truth about a situation unless you were there, unless you are that person, unless you understand that person. Like, fair enough, like Harry could make his opinions about Meghan because he knows Meghan personally. Like, people who don't know her, have never experienced her life, making assumptions about her is just unfair, because then people take that as gospel and just read it or listen to it and think, oh, well, Meghan Markle must have done this because the newspaper said. But one thing you will learn is that every newspaper follows a certain political stance and will always push their own agenda. So every newspaper article is often written with an agenda behind it. So you have to pick your news sources very carefully. But yeah, let's go to the next example. Yeah. So what's this?
So this is the same person. I don't know who Sarah Vine is, but she's clearly some.
Oh, it's the journalist, I think.
Person, yeah. And so they're saying, Kate's wardrobe changed when she went. Yeah. So when Kate went from being not a member of the royal family to a member of the royal family, her wardrobe changed and she looks fantastic. exactly the same concept with Meghan, but they're saying we Brits prefer true royalty to fashion royalty. So they're saying that
you
her
might look
fashion's
nice, but you're
changed.
not a royal.
Yeah, and it's this way we're saying we Brits, that's such a us and them thing. So it's
Also, I don't
not
like when you
part
use
of that.
phrases like that. I mean, we learned about it in English and we analysed it when I did English language for A level, and using the whole like we Brit, it's like inviting you to be like, yeah, because you're British, you agree with this as well, and it like really encourages people to side, and it's just not true. Like
very
I read this article and I'm like,
it-
do we prefer true royalty to fashion? I don't
it's
understand.
very provocative in that sense. So it's like it's almost influencing people's opinions without them realizing. But again, ridiculous.
Kate and Will's Duke and Duchess secretly set up companies to protect their brand, just like the Beckhams.
That's a perfectly standard news story in terms of, you think that's not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing. That's a newspaper heading that simply says this is what's happened.
Yeah. A right royal cash in, how Prince Harry and Meghan Markle trademarked over 100 items from hoodies to socks 6 months before split with monarchy, with new empire worth up to 400. I mean, even if you look at the way the pictures are presented, right? If you go back on any of these pictures, I mean, anything to do with Will and Kate, it's like this. Oh, look at them. So the picture for reference of William and Kate there is after each royal wedding. It's very typical for the new couple to go out onto the balcony of Buckingham Palace, because usually there'll be a lot of British people outside just wanting to see the newlyweds, and they'll usually have a kiss in front of the nation. This is from that picture. But you can tell, that would spark a lot of patriotism for a lot of people. Like seeing that would be like, oh, I remember the royal wedding kind of thing. And then on the one about Meghan and and then you see the one of Meghan and Harry, and I'm presuming that's a picture of some sort of tax thing, or you're trying to show them the money aspect of it. And it's like, even with this one as well, when you talking about secretly set up companies, there's no reference to how much money. It's not like, they're not outraged, whereas you see this and it's like they're sold over 100 items, they've got 400 million, the 6 months in capital letters, like
and so this new empire obviously is a direct like contrast to empire in obviously a monarchy sense.
Also, I don't know whether this is just because they haven't scrolled down far up enough on the page, but like every single one of these seems to have been shared so many times when it's the one about Meghan and Harry and not when it's about Kate and Will. So understand that too much.
I think
do you have other ones as well?
There's a couple more, but this isn't a good one about
beaming Kate gazes lovingly at sleeping Prince Louis as she and William attend his christening in their first appearance as a family of 5, but the Queen misses the big day. Revealed the Queen won't be at Archie's christening because Meghan, Harry and the mystery godparents planned to baptise him today, but had to rearrange when they realised Her Majesty and Prince Charles were already busy.
Again, it seems to be essentially be the same concept. Is there's a christening, the Queen wasn't there, but it's written completely differently, and it seems to be a big trend to put words in capital letters
when it's about Meghan. And also, even when you look again at this picture, right, you see Kate dressed beautifully at the christening in a very that's very stereotypical. When you look at that picture, she's a royal because she looks very fancy, she looks very well dressed. And you look at the picture they've used of Meghan and she doesn't look like a royal, she looks just like she's being papped by the
random paparazzi picture.
It's not like a beautiful picture of her that was taken by someone for the royal family, it's just paparazzi.
I was just going to say, all the pictures we're seeing of Kate are like the official photos from any event. Like that's an official photo that came from her christening. The same with that's the official photo of their wedding. Whereas the ones of Meghan are just like random paparazzi pictures of them out and about, as opposed to, they could easily have used the picture from their wedding. They could easily have used a picture, of her with the baby, or from, I don't know if the christening had happened by this point, but say it's just a ridiculous comparison. And the only other one I think I wanted to share, because I think this one's also important because it's not directly about Meghan. So this is about Christmas time. So Carol is Kate's mum. So it says, Carol wins Granny War. Duke and Duchess of Cambridge will spend second private Christmas with the Middleton family rather than joining the Queen of Sandringham. Sandringham's another royal residence. It's where the whole royal family decamps to at Christmas. So it's a thing that the whole royal family goes to spend Christmas at Sandringham. So this is just saying that, obviously Kate's got her own family that's not the royal family, and they're going to spend Christmas with that part of the family. And then here we've got, doesn't the Queen deserve better than this baffling festive absence? Richard Kay examines the impact of Prince Harry and Meghan's Markle decision to not spend Christmas with the royal family.
This is exactly what we're saying though as well, about like the articles that they write about are just so like pointless. Who on earth cares what Meghan, Kate,
where they're going
anyone goes for Christmas? Why on earth would you write an article being like, do you not think the Queen at least deserves to see you at Christmas? Like, there's plenty of families who don't see each other on Christmas regardless of their royal status, you know, it's just not that big of a deal. The whole thing really just like annoys me.
And I think that's a part that I think that's sort of something that fuels the fire with how people can feel very, very strongly for or against the monarchy, is the way that it's just obsessively reported in the media. And I think, to be honest, I think it would just, the whole system would work better if the media didn't, you know, if the royals didn't crop up in the media that much.
Or if there was maybe some sort of like person, the royal family had a royal journalist whose specific job was to just tell the facts of what is happening in the royal family. It wasn't hearsay or, you know, story opinion articles and stuff, because I just think like,
you think, I guess it's like, well, that can never, because of sort of, if there is any big news, it's always the case that it's a statement's released from Buckingham Palace and that's given to the Press Association and the BBC, and then it filters its way everywhere else. But like, I don't know really how we'd ever get to that situation, because what we're talking about essentially is censorship. Is we're saying that it's the royal family going, no, you can't put this in the newspaper, which is obviously not the society we live in. But just, you know, people's mindsets could change and realize, say, that it's completely unnecessary and harmful to keep pushing this random and utterly useless stuff in the newspapers.
This is the thing, you know, I know it's not specifically just royal family, you know, royal family. I just don't agree with the news. I understand, obviously, you know, I'm not saying censor anyone, but I think there should be strict rules about the way that you can talk about people specifically, you know, because there's cases where, again, this isn't really royal family relevant, but in terms of like, if anybody's heard of Caroline Flack, who was a British TV presenter who recently committed suicide because of the way she was portrayed in the media. And a lot of people were protesting and trying to petition for certain rules, because, like I say, these journalists and people believe that, oh, well, they're a royal family member, so I deserve to know everything that they're doing in their life because I'm from Britain and I deserve to know what my royal family is doing.
And therefore we can report on every aspect of their life.
But if you flipped that and said, well, they're in charge of our country and we're members of their country, so they should know everything that we're doing, there would be outrage. People would not be like, this is against my privacy, I should not have to give into these rules and stuff. And I just think like, it's not even so much the things they report about, which, even though they are a bit pathetic in my opinion, it's not even so much the thing they report about, it's the way that they report about them. It's using this language that is so inherently negative against against Meghan and Harry, when it's the other way around. And I don't know whether it's to do with Meghan. Obviously Meghan's not to blame, but I don't know whether people have picked Meghan or whether it's the fact that he's the second born and you know, he doesn't have as much prestige as the next heir or whatever, anything to do with that. Not the next heir, sorry, one of the future heirs. You know, it's just utterly ridiculous in my opinion. So I think in general, I've said before earlier, you know, the monarchy to me isn't amazing, it's not horrible, it just exists. But I think there's aspects like this where I just think, you know, regardless of their privilege, and I do think they are privileged, you know, they live in
so you can't deny that. And I also
they're
agree
human.
And
so you should not write about them in the way that they're portrayed. And we do not have a right as British citizens, we do not have a right to say such horrible things about our royal family, no matter what they've done, you know. I'm not trying to defend the monarchy, but I don't think that you have a right as a British citizen to say, well, I'm allowed to say this because they're ruling my country. It's like, you don't have a right to talk about someone that disrespectfully. You can present the facts and you can have your opinion based on fact. But what a lot of people in England do, in my opinion, is form opinions about Meghan based on people's opinions. It's not, here is what Meghan's done, now base your opinion on the fact. It's, here's what Meghan's done and it's outrageous and it's horrible. And then people go, oh, well, the newspaper wrote it's horrendous and outrageous, so it must be. And that is wrong, in my opinion.
generally say, if you actually focus on what, you know, for the brief time that they were senior members of the royal family together, they did nothing but good. You know, they were, say, spearheading so many say charity things. William and Harry have been really big at the front of a big mental health thing that's sort of been spearheaded by those two on behalf of the royal family recently. You know, they were doing a lot of good work together, but that's not what anyone remembers from their time in the royal family. It's all
this controversy
articles. Yeah. And so even it's not finished, because obviously with Prince Philip's funeral on Saturday, they now live in LA. Harry is en route at the moment to fly to the UK, and Meghan's not coming. And the news are
not because she doesn't want to.
Yeah, the tabloid articles are saying, you know, Harry's coming, Meghan's not, to imply that, you know, she's shunning the royal family, she's making a statement by not coming. No, it's because she's heavily pregnant and
her doctor told her not to
across the Atlantic in a pandemic. Like, that's the reason why. But even now the news articles are still trying to, like, not as overtly as they were before, but it's still subtly, you know, by not putting that in the headline and saying Harry's coming, Meghan's not, you're implying that, you know, you're implying these other things instead of just stating the fact.
And this is, again, what I'm saying is, like, they're making assumptions, saying, well, Meghan didn't want to, or, you know, you are implying something when you say that, like you said, and they don't know that. They've not said, okay, let's have an interview with Meghan and let's kind of find this out, or they haven't had anyone who spoke to Meghan say these things. It's just it's like me learning about a topic and writing an article and publishing it to the nation and going, well, that's the truth. It's not. It's based on one person's perspective, and especially when it's journalists who do not know these people, I don't think you can trust their opinions. Like, fair enough, everyone's entitled to their opinion. I don't think that, you know, I don't believe in, like, shunning people or whatever. Like, you can have your opinion, but writing in it in such a negative way, and especially when you don't know those facts, it's just disrespectful, in my opinion. Like, I would never write in an article for the Daily Mail. Maybe, I mean, you know, there's obviously opinion articles which appear in newspapers in which, you know, it's someone's opinion very explicitly to say opinion article, but publishing things in the news being like, oh, well, Meghan's not coming to England, and writing about it in this tone, you are putting your own personal agenda across, regardless of whether you think you are or not. You are, in my opinion.
Yeah, so it's still, it's inciting something, and and it's still really, it's just still dangerous, you know. It's suddenly what we've got here is, you know, a big national event of mourning for Prince Philip, yet the news is now making it a big, like, oh, but, you know, Meghan's shunning the royal family by not attending. It's like, that's not what's important here. Like, you know, let the family grieve. You know, clearly someone who is an incredibly important member of their family. And, you know, just this is the one time to give the royal family a little bit of privacy, and they're getting the complete opposite. You know, every
because,
single
again,
one of them is
people think
about how they feel, and you think, I bet they feel devastated. Why do we need to hear it from them to confirm? Like, Prince Charles came out in front of the house that they live in and read a statement, and it's like, they're not going to stand there and be like, I'm thrilled. You know, they're going to stand there and say, you know, I'm heartbroken. So why do we need that confirmed?
Thing, though, of, like, the British public and journalists believe they have a right to that information because, well, you are a royal family. Like, like, can you imagine if a member of your family died and someone said, well, come outside your house and make a speech about it?
Excuse me, duty to inform everyone.
Like, sorry, Charles's dad just died. He's like, why are you dragging him out onto, you know, like, and to address this? And I mean, as you can see, you know, this is a topic that, I mean, this is a huge topic. We're never going to be able to talk about it all. And it comes, this is all our opinion.
Celebrity culture in general as well. We're talking about saying the fact that, you know, anything happens, and because it comes back to, say, a scene in the very beginning of The Crown when the Queen's father passed away when she was on a tour, and you mentioned it then. So that the point that she steps out of the house, so they're in this.
She's
I think
just being told that her dad has died.
Told that her father's died at a very young age. You know,
and she is now going to be queen.
She's now the queen, and they've had to say, right, prepare yourself. There's already lots of journalists outside. She's in, like, some random house in the middle of nowhere, and yet journalists have flocked. Do you think someone at that point is in a very vulnerable state?
She's in mourning, and she's in shock.
Yeah, And yet the first thing is, you know, you're going to be photographed as you step from out this house into the car. And this is where it comes, this idea that the royals never show emotion and things, you know, you very rarely see them crying and things in public. And it's because of this, you know, every single move of theirs is photographed, and something that in The Crown, I think it's her grandmother says to her, so God knows what happened in real life, but I completely agree that the way the royals, the way that this almost like this celebrity culture around the royals is that the second that they smile, laugh, cry, they have declared an opinion, and that suddenly is a big deal. You know, if the Queen is seen crying at some event, suddenly that's all in the press. And, you know, and it can be taken in numerous ways. So that's why on the whole, like, the royal family is always seen to be, they have to be impartial, because that's the ethos of the royal family. But as people, you know, they are, everything that's done in public has to be, say, impartial, no emotion, no opinion, because the second that they do anything that can be misconstrued or, say, interpreted in a certain way, that hits the press. And it just takes on a life of its own. So I mean, to be fair, you know, maybe it's a good thing that they get to have a private funeral for Prince Philip,
I would say so.
Having to do it all in public. Like I say, I think it's ridiculous that there are pictures, very famous pictures of Charles, Philip and Prince Harry and Prince William walking behind Princess Diana's coffin at her funeral.
You can't imagine the feeling of that. Like, I can't imagine one of my relatives dying and going to a funeral and people just want to take pictures. Like, it's such an intense thing. And I think regardless of your opinion on the monarchy, I don't think that you could sit there as a human being and say, you know, regardless of what they're doing, I don't care if they're at a funeral, I don't care if they're doing this or doing that, I have a right to take a picture of them and find out what they're doing. Like, as a human being, can you not sympathize and empathize with somebody that, you know, they're going through an awful time? Give them space. Like, the royal family is going to be there when they've finished mourning. Like, give them a bit of time. Like, because people will be like, oh, well, you know, we haven't heard from the Queen yet. It's like, because her husband of 73 years, 73 years has just died. Maybe the Queen needs just a couple of days to, you know, bring herself together. Like,
exactly. And this is, I know we've gone on way too long, but I think this is important mentioning that William and Harry were, I think, about 15 and 12 when their mother was killed. So they had, and they'll see that thrust them into the public eye. So there's these very famous pictures of them walking behind their mother's coffin, you know, in front of crowds and crowds of people, presumably almost being told, you know, you've kind of got to hold it together because you are being photographed. That's an awful thing to go through at any age, let alone when you're not even an adult.
And to them be told you can't show emotion about this. Exactly.
And so it's quite like one of the most popularly believed causes for that car crash that Princess Diana died in is to do with the paparazzi. It's I think I was reading a bit about it before this, and it seems to have kind of been duly blamed on the driver, who was either intoxicated or had taken drugs. So the driver was reckless, but they were also being chased by paparazzi in cars behind them. So that's sort of what's popular. You know, people always talk about Princess Diana was killed by the press, because she was hounded by the media. You know, especially once she split from, you know, Prince Charles, she was, you know, the media just wanted to know every single part of her life. So kind of everyone could sort of was saying with like, well, when Harry had to go through his mother being killed by the press, you know, being hounded by the press, that partly it did then ultimately cause her death. And then the exact same thing is happening to his wife. Would you not also leave?
Yeah.
You know, this, like, you can't imagine, it's this idea of history repeating itself. It's like, we've gone through this once before. The warning signs are now there that they are being relentlessly photographed, followed by the press.
I completely agree.
If you've got that as a personal memory of, say, what happened to your own mother, and then, you know, you've now got a family, you know, wife and a child to look after, it's like, well, I really don't think you can blame the man for wanting to just escape. You think if you're basically trying to, so if you're, you know, if your wife has said that I'm sort of so, you know, we're getting so harassed by the media that it's seriously affecting me, and I'm worried that either say I'm going to do something to myself or something's going to happen to us. You need to do something. So yeah, I think that's
I completely agree with you, definitely. But I think, you know, just to wrap up, I think just bear in mind that most of the stuff we talked about today is our opinion. Obviously we do have opinions about this stuff. This is not gospel. This is us. We've been asked to share what we think about the monarchy, what we think about the situation, and that's our opinions on them. Obviously we have tried to give you some actual facts as well. But like we said before, if anybody has any questions that we can maybe try and answer, whether they're about our opinion on things or whether they're
factual ones or opinion ones,
then please either, you know, I always encourage you guys, if you don't want to comment, if you don't want other people to see that you are asking us these questions, you can always find us on Microsoft Teams and send us a message. So obviously my name is Amber, that's Olivia. Just type in our names and we should come up. If you don't want people to know, just send us a message, because then we at least know that you have some questions. And again, you know, please share, get involved in the discussion, whether it's in the comments or with us on Microsoft Teams as well. But thank you so much for watching. I know that this episode will be a long one. Obviously, as usual, we kind of have gone off on a bit of a tangent, but topics like this, the ones that you ask us to go to talk about, if they're a really important topic, they're really hard to summarize in 20 minutes, especially when you specifically ask us for facts and our opinions on them. It's just impossible to do that so quickly. So thank you so much for watching. We hope that you enjoy it. You know, this is the episode that a lot of you have requested. So hopefully you enjoy it. Again, if there's any words, anything you don't understand, please just comment and we can answer them. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for listening.